What up, witches, and welcome to Witch and a Bitch in a Podcast. I'm your host, Darren.
And I'm Vicky. How are you all today? I hope you're really, really well. I can't stop doing it.
It's totally fine. So, everyone, we have
it?
Sorry?
I've just jumped in. What's it?
Every
sorry,
episode.
yes.
Every episode, I always ask everybody how they are, and he always pays me out because they can't answer and all the and I always
well,
say
I can,
really, really
I
well.
can, Vicky, and I know I'm jumping in. I'm great. I'm great. Now I've shut up.
No, it's totally fine. So a lot of you long-time listeners will be very familiar with our guest that we have today. So she was kind enough to bless us with being our very first guest on this podcast and welcoming her back again. So can you please welcome Fiona Horne?
Hey! Thanks, guys.
So obviously
Thank you everyone who's watching.
Watching, listening, all of the above.
All the above. All the above.
Obviously, we are going to catch up with you a little bit first before we jump into the stuff. But just to let you all know that Australia's best known and much loved expert in the area of art of witchcraft, Fiona Horne, releases a new book for teens everywhere called TEEN MAGICK. So, and it's a witchcraft guide for a new generation and offers insight and guidance for teen witches as they navigate this new and ever-changing world dominated by social media and technology. This gutsy guide takes teen witches on a journey of self-discovery to dig deep and learn about all the magic that is inside of them and then shine that magic into the world. So we invited Fiona back because we know that the book has just come out. You've just done a tour in Western Australia about the book, and we wanted to bring you here just to like before we start. Everyone, I want you to, in a moment, pause this podcast, go to Amazon or wherever you order your books from, find TEEN MAGICK by Fiona Horne, click buy now. Sorry, it's Teen Witch, so I keep saying TEEN MAGICK. TEEN Witch by Fiona Horne, and click buy now.
But guess what, guys? It is TEEN MAGICK, and I promise you, I was jumping around on it. Is TEEN MAGICK, a guide. Witchcraft for a new generation.
Yes,
it's TEEN MAGICK. There it is.
I knew it. It was in my brain.
I was wrong.
And the best way, if you hit pause, the best way, if you're curious to actually get a copy in your own hands, is to go to my website. It is available on all outlets like Booktopia and all of that sort of stuff, good stuff, internationally through Amazon, of course. Because it's got its claws in everything. But having said that, if you go to my website, fionahorne.com, HORNE.com, all the links are there. That it makes it really easy just to hit a link and takes you to where you can get the book. Yeah, and you're actually getting TEEN MAGICK, witchcraft for a new generation. Don't worry, because originally it was called Teen Witch and something, but it was just too many other publications that have a similar title. And TEEN MAGICK, witchcraft for a new generation, seemed more accurate and I remember the content of the book.
And when we last had you on our show, I remember when we talked about this, that it was coming out soon. And I remember because I brought up Life's a Witch, which was their bubble gum pink cover.
Yeah.
And I actually did the comparison between the two. Like I was flicking through, comparing the two and having a look. And can I just say that you've done it again. Like when you're doing a rewrite, you think, how can you reinvent the wheel so many times? But I can't sing the praises enough for this book.
Oh, thank you, Darren. Yeah, it was something when the publisher said, you want to do, we can re-release it if the rights have reverted to you, and the rights had reverted to me after, it'd been out of print for a while, and it was originally published by Random House. And they said, you could probably just do a little tweak and we'll whack a new cover on it and send it out into the world, and it'd be good to have it back in print. But when I looked at it, I thought, I have to rewrite this whole bloody thing almost, and I did. I mean, there are some parts of it that are, certainly the nature stuff, the nature magic stuff. And, there's a lot of areas of it where I kept it with that nugget of light that it originally was sparked with. Yet there's so much new material in it and so much reworked material to reflect life now as teens experience it and even as adults experience it.
100%.
Yeah, because that's the thing. That's what I found as well when I was reading through it, that it's not, there's so much information. It's so very relevant, not only for teens, but for, I guess, older witches, I like to say.
Yeah.
Or like the greater community, because there's some really great points in there, which I know we're going to chat a lot more about after. But one thing that I really loved, and what I really, especially as a mum as well, because I guess I was looking at this from 2 points of view when I was reading it as well, is that the theme throughout the whole book is that it's really emphasizing and empowering teens through this whole journey of self-discovery and encouraging them to do that and really work through, like you touch on topics of like body image and personal development and things like that as well. And I really liked that. And I just wondered what inspired you to write about that. And I love the language that you've used throughout it. It is really empowering rather than disempowering.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Vicky, especially because you're a mum, you know, and I really am grateful and appreciate that feedback from you, because I really did try to, you know, create in this rewrite more consciously than I might have, you know, 17 or 18 years ago when I first created the book. And remember, when I first created the book, my job in the entertainment industry was on a big roll, you know, so I was very much in the public eye and, you know, definitely performing to that to a degree. And this book came after, you know, further, you know, nearly 2 decades of introspection and work as a witch, and also growing and evolving as a human being myself, you know, and then having an opportunity to revisit the original material and also look around and interact with the teens today. And one of the key things that was jumping out at me to address was to be inclusive of the carers. And, you know, in this world where now you can almost get into trouble for saying mum and dad, and you've got to say parents, parent one, parent two. So that's but the but is that more than ever I felt there was a positive opportunity to share with teenagers how they could be an empowered individual as they respect and learn from their elders. Now, whether their elders are elders like me, you know, in approaching into my crone years, more than half a century on the planet, and I'm talking to them, I'm an elder, or whether they're actually looking to the parent, the carer, the mum, the dad, who is sharing this journey with them. And I really understood more than ever that when children, whilst I have passed the physical age where I would have a child born out of my womb, so to speak, I realised I've had many children, 14 actually. This is the 14th one. My girlfriend, my books and my babies. And then you could even say many ways, because, you know, I birthed them, I raised them, I've been on a journey with them, especially this one for nearly 2 decades, and to revisit it and hang out with my grown-up child here and offer it out into the world again, and tap into its inner child and share it. I became aware of this, that, you know, there's a beautiful opportunity to share the concept that obviously children, we have them for them to learn from us, but often the most powerful thing an adult can do is learn from their own child, and it's magnified times 1,000 when it's a witchling situation, or witchling parent who doesn't have any idea why their teenagers are into this stuff and learns about it and finds it empowering and uplifting as well. So really tried to sort of make the you know, share, and that was sort of coming through me as well, not just from my ego-oriented linear brain creating something. It was a message, a spirit message that was coming through that would be appropriate now to emphasize the parent carer and the child, and their, you know, their crossover role, their reciprocal role in this magical world.
I really love that you brought us to that topic, because that's one of the things that I've noticed in the witchy world is that it's so common for more experienced witches or older witches to dismiss the views and opinions of a younger, when I say younger by age or by practice, witch. They dismiss the baby witch or the witchling, saying, what do you know? Like, and they almost like fob them off as if to say, you don't know anything because you haven't been around as long as I have. Whereas, like what you just said then, like it's important for us as elders to also learn from the younger generation.
Oh, very much so. And, you know, I just finished a tour of Western Australia in support of this book, but it wasn't really a book tour as much. The book was available at the events, but it was a workshop, an interactive workshop. So I didn't present it. I didn't even barely held the book in my hand. I didn't refer to it as much as say, this is in the book. There's a chapter about this. This is what I'm going to show you now. These are, you know, it was even things like, you know, how to set up a teen-oriented altar, where what can you substitute for a candle flame for fire when your parents won't let you light matches in your bedroom, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But going back to, for a moment, the teen wisdom, what really struck me this time was, you know, to have a room full, or a lot of teenagers aged between, well, you know, let's just say witchlings, aged from as young as 7 through to the proverbial teen years of 18, 19 or so. And then there was, you know, people above and that too, because adults came as well who were curious to revisit their foundation practice. But anyway, just talking about that slice of proverbial teen, the wisdom from them, and also the light in their eyes, and their genuine sincerity, their authenticity with self, their owning their choice to be there. When I actually offered at one of the talks that, witchcraft has always attracted the weirdos, and I meant it in this inclusive way, a few teens sort of looked at, I'm not weird. I'm not weird. And I thought this is, and a lot of people did do the thumbs up. But my point is that there seems to be in this very extraordinary world of where social media, is running rampant, and for great outcome and the oppositely terrible outcome. Somewhere in the middle of all that, teenagers these teens that are born now seem to have this wonderful, authentic ability to be confident in their opinions. This is just what I noticed of the witches that came. Confident in their opinions, and also quite tolerant of opinions that differed from theirs, which I found very, very inspiring. Because I'm just particularly thinking, there was one girl that spoke at the Fremantle event, and she offered, this is just something I thought was really amazing. She said, I have a short attention span. It's very hard for me to concentrate on things. And she said that very clearly. She was making an authentic, calm, non-judgmental assessment of her mental state and her individuality. This is my reality. Can't particularly change it. I'm accepting and authentically owning the fact that I have a short attention span. She said, the challenge for me when I want to practice my craft, and this is what was so extraordinary to me, I wonder if you guys will pick up on this. She said, I know that unless I can do it alone in my room and focus, that I can't be a real witch. And I was like, oh my gosh, because 20 years ago, the dialogue was, if you're not initiated into a coven with other witches under some kind of hierarchical structure where they're telling you what to do, she's actually saying, I understand that if I cannot do it by myself, then I cannot call myself a witch. And I just thought, what an extraordinary flip that is, and how beautiful and empowering, because that was, for me personally, the message I was trying to give back in the day was, yes, your way is good. The eclectic solitary witch is in fact a real witch and an essential part of the evolution of our magical practice and how we can be useful in the world and empowered in the world as witches and individuals. And so for her to offer that was really remarkable. So the advice I was giving her was extraordinary. She said, it helps me if I'm with other people and we can kind of discuss things and I can stay engaged. But if I'm on my own, I'm distracted really easily and I get frustrated and unhappy. And so she's looking for an assertive way to address it. And I said, I think honestly, her name was Venus. I said, I honestly think, Venus, that maybe you're going to be a connector. You're going to speak to other teenagers who feel similarly, and you're going to form a group and your group is going to work together. That's a new form of coven. That is a non-binary, non-hierarchical coven arrangement where witches are learning, growing, evolving, teaching, helping each other together. And that isn't, I said, no pressure. You don't have to do this. But if you chose to, from what I'm determining, from what you're offering, that's your particular gift and skill. How beautiful. Because there will always, it's necessary for the witches who can do the work alone, who can do the meditation, the ritual, or the learning, the crafting of it on their own. There's a huge role to play in the people that can actually offer it out into the world and create environments and structures where people can come together and do it together. So I thought that was very exciting and completely the opposite of, which means all the witches like me, like Phyllis Curott, Lucy Cavendish, all of us who have been out there talking about it, sharing it for so long, are actually offering a light that's useful for people, shining on their path to help them forge their own.
Yeah. And it's finally coming through. And that's what I also love about the book as well, is that you talk about it in a really foundational, simplistic kind of way as well, and encouraging them to then build upon that themselves by going and doing research and going and doing things. And I think sometimes that's something that's missing, is that we try to run before we can walk, or instantly dismiss that there's one way to do things.
Well, the early books I read, we're talking 30 years ago, whatever, were very dogmatic about this is how it has to be done, or you're not doing it properly and you're not a real witch. And it's just evolved and changed so much. And that was one of the biggest hurdles as a young, person / witch that and even in my 30s, I was still struggling with, am I doing this?
Are you doing it?
Properly? Can I, and now it's like, I've been shown more than ever that the message is to don't question your methods, do what you feel is innately right, anchored by obviously some principles of practice that make us witches. But one of the other parts that I talked about, I realized in the workshop tour that I just did, where I'm face to face with people, is the substitutions. Like, we didn't have Amazon and online delivery and ordering when, and it was really quite the production. If you were, decided you needed to get an athame or wolf hair for a spell or something, you're like, dragon's blood resin, whatever. How am I going to get this? And I've sort of got this whole approach to using the not authentic as much as the mindful skill, authentic and mindful skill of foraging and fossicking for magical tools and letting the universe present them to you. Also, there's a big part of being legal, like, don't forage and fossick in a national park. Being ethical, take only what you need, give something back that's either biodegradable or service oriented. Like, if you take feathers from a park because a duck or a bird has shed them, then you would clean up the park to offer some energy back, and things like that. There's that. So that was one of the emphasis I placed in the new book and also in the talks, was how to make your witchcraft sustainable and environmentally and supportive in environmentally challenged times. And then that even linked down to or into the foundational practice of we are the healers, we are the custodians now. And then that linked into, the original Indigenous custodians of the land that we're on, to tap here on the planet, like on the continent of Australia, is tap into, how were the people, the original magical people of this region honouring the earth, interacting with the earth, working with the healing aspects of the earth, taking care of the earth, the land, all its inhabitants and creatures. So, I've been researching quite a bit of writing from Aboriginal witches to learn what their recommendations are, because there's actually a lot of Aboriginal witches and they're very generous with their advice and insight. So it's pretty awesome.
That's so magical in itself.
Yeah.
I was actually going to say something. I was going to jokingly say, oh my God, you must be psychic, because you've literally touched on about 5 of the points I had written down without me even bringing them up.
But you know what I do?
You're fine.
I start to waffle on, Darren. So
no, it's not waffling.
Feel free to revisit.
It's not waffling.
I'm like
No. It's good.
Great.
It just means that the bits that we picked up were like, this is a key takeaway.
Yeah.
Exactly the key takeaway. Like, I'm like, my job is so easy. We jokingly say that you were like probably one of the biggest blessings we could have had as a first-time guest, because of the fact that we had such this thing like, how are we going to interview someone? But you made our job so easy that first time that then every other interview since then, it's like set a precedent. Like, interviewing is easy.
Oh, I'm grateful.
We could do
Thank
this.
you. I'm grateful I could do that, because I'm notorious for waffling on. Even this bloody tour I just did, not bloody, but the tour was like, I literally was standing there talking for 2 hours. And I mean, it was interactive, so questions and stuff were going back and forth.
Yeah.
I just, when they were finished, I was like, oh my God, is it really, have I really been talking for nearly 2 hours? I've only got 5 minutes left. It's like, and then there's like another hour and a half, 2 hours meeting and greeting everyone after. So these events were just these epic 4-hour explosions of energy that were remarkable. And even then, I don't think, you just felt like, you could offer another 20 of these and still only be scratching the surface,
Exactly.
Especially when people start interacting and offering their wisdom, as we, going back to what we were saying earlier, like there's this innate wisdom in teenagers that's really remarkable. And I find that really reassuring and inspiring. And I could offer that the future is magical, and that's just not a glib little kind of hip hashtag. It's actually the truth.
Yeah. Well, so what I actually wanted to do now, there's a couple of points I wanted to touch on in what that blabbering, as you call it, that you just did. But no, one of them was like what I really loved about this book, and I was wondering if you'd do us the kind honor of actually sharing this coming from you. In the book itself, you put a little quote of a letter that you actually wrote when you were 17, and I think like that it speaks to what you were just saying about how the younger generation, page 17, so it was how
got it.
How the younger generation are full of such wisdom. And when I read this excerpt from you, I was like, wow, like even this in itself I took so much from this quote, and that was from you way back when, before you even called it a book of shadows. And
Yeah, it was just a journal. Yeah,
magical. So would you be kind enough to share that with us?
All right, thank you. Yeah, guys, I will. Okay, so this is page 17 of Teen Magic, and it's a letter to me from me by Fiona Horne, age 17. Extraordinary, isn't it? Here's an insight from a young girl I once knew. This is something I wrote when I was 17. I recorded it in my first book of shadows. I still have it, although I didn't call it that at the time. Oh, yeah, all my notebooks, all my diaries, all of it.
Yeah.
But I can see now that, you know, so I didn't call it a book of shadows at the time. It was just a notebook, but I can see now it was the start of something magical. So this is what I wrote to myself. Reading about the craft is a valid pursuit and use of time. I even remember where I wrote this. I was sitting on the beach. Yeah. I was sitting, I used to do, I'll just segue for 1 second. I was, it's funny when you think Venus, the girl I mentioned, she was saying, I can't be on my own. I have a short attention span. I need to be with others to feed that into something that's useful, you know, and keep it engaged. But I was the opposite. I had a very long attention span. I particularly enjoyed just being alone, and I would I didn't drive. I would get buses. I lived in the southern suburbs of Sydney, and I would get trains and buses so that I could get as far away on a beach as I felt I could possibly get. So I would get trains and buses to Palm Beach in the northern suburbs, and I would then walk the entire length of the beach all the way up to the far headland to get as far away as at the time I thought was possible, you know, using public transport and not having Uber or not having much money, you know, 30-cent bus ticket back in those days. And I remember sitting up there on that beach, and I would do it because I felt like I needed to get that far away from everything to have some kind of spiritual or you know, to actually really feel like I was embodying in my existence how different inside I felt and how separate I felt from everyone else and isolated. So I would create a situation where I physically was that isolated. And then I wrote stuff like this and thought about life, looking at the ocean. And I wrote this that day, I remember. Okay, so reading about the craft is a valid pursuit and use of time, because as I read, it exists in my mind. This is just as valid as a physical ritual to express and reaffirm my beliefs. A healthy body, these are all points and notes, and this is where I get to the red page. I wish I had a light to read it. Hang on, I might, if I stick it up under here. Yeah, where I can see it a bit clearer. A healthy body will make me a more efficient witch. Adults use 10% of their brains. The key to the other 90% is in myth and ritual. When a child is born, I think they use 100% of their brain before becoming adulterated. Imagination, games, ritual, and make-believe are the keys to opening up to magical powers and the other 90% of our brains. The key to practicing the craft, which I feel instinctively is my heritage, is meditation, stilling and focusing my mind. When I'm feeling unconfident in ritual, all I need to do is stop and meditate. If I take it slow, I will eventually evolve as I'm meant to. You are on the path. You don't need to know where it goes. Just follow it. It's really deep, isn't it?
It
for
is.
a 17-year-old to be writing these things.
Yeah.
One small step at a time will gradually integrate the craft into my everyday life. Magic and beliefs aren't about how many rituals you do, how complicated they are, or if you did them correctly. It's about feeling it deep inside and integrating it, plus connecting with the timeless knowledge of ourselves that we are born with and forget as we grow up. Just do what feels right, relax, and there will be time for everything. Belief in yourself and your methods is all you need. Yeah, it's pretty pretty extraordinary.
Mic drop right there. That's the whole thing. Yeah.
So if that hasn't convinced anyone listening to this or watching it, buy the book, then you, like, I don't want to call you names, but like, just go do it. Just go do it. Like,
go do it.
No, in all honesty, because, and the reason why that touched me so much when I read through that is I wish that younger version of me had the wisdom to be able to think like that, because I got in my head for so many years and didn't practice my craft for so many years because I'm like, I didn't know if I'm doing it right, or, you know, am I thinking about it in the right way, or is this even the right path for me? Like, so much question, and like I got so
much
hung
ego.
up on
It's an ego thing, you know. It's like that And I think the ego, you know, and I wrote about this in Art of Witch, you know,
Yep.
the ego, as I've learned, has an important role to play in the human evolution, obviously, the individual, because it sets boundaries, parameters, it helps you carve out a character, so to speak.
Yeah.
However, as a magical person, the ego at a point in life becomes it's not useful anymore. It becomes it kind of runs its course. It's like you know, it's just it. And I think that that's part of it all, is that hypercritical sense of self, which is like, oh, if I don't do it like this, or if I don't feel this, or if this doesn't happen, then it's not worth it. It's not real. And you get so obsessed with the idea that you need to know the results. You need to witness the results of your rituals and spells.
Yeah.
Could you imagine for a moment that if something you did that you didn't actually consciously see around you changed someone's life on the other side of the world? That's one of the things that I think I've learned is, and I experience that sometimes literally, in the sense of someone might actually literally read a book of mine on the other side of the world, and it changes their life. Now, I don't know that, you know, Josephine, you know, blogs bought my book in Finland and read it, and it changed her life. So funnily enough, more now than ever in the world of the internet and how we can put our thoughts and ideas into a tangible, you know, digital environment like that. I'm just talking about practical examples of how this concept could consider to work. But what if it isn't a practical example as much as it's just like you just put some good energy out in the world and it actually had an effect. You know, let's remember the light that from the stars that we see happened billions of years ago. It's affecting us.
It's still affecting us now.
Yeah. So let's consider, I think, you know, as magical people, that's a necessary evolution of concept, is to understand that you actually do make a difference like that. And if you just do this stuff to your best effort, whatever that looks like on the day, you know. The other thing I realized I was talking about a lot in the lecture or in the workshops was using the pentagram as a tool of awareness. Now, that might sound really obvious. We all wear them. We have them on T-shirts. They're in books. They're all around, you know, the 5-pointed star. Increasingly, and I talked about it in Art of Witch, and even, you know, because I reworked this Teen Witch book after doing my manifesto Art of Witch. So the Teen Witch book is kind of impregnated with all this now as well. But, you know, just real simply, you know, if you think of the 4 lower points of the 5-pointed star as being air, earth, fire, and water in whatever combination you want, depending on where you are in the world, and if you're looking at it one direction, if you want to line it up with the, you know,
everywhere, which way?
North, south, east, and west. But magic works between the worlds, so maybe we don't need to put a definitive, you know, location for these elements. They are, however, if we consider it, the 4 points of the star, then what's the 5th point? The 5th point is spirit. And spirit, what I realized I was saying in the workshops, because sometimes when I talk, I don't feel like it's coming from me, it's coming through me, and something else is offering this information, and I just get out of the way and let it
do its
through.
thing.
So the 5th element, spirit, kept coming through a lot as like that is actually the way forward now for witches, to let spirit guide the activities. We anchor them in the physical realm with our ritual work, with our custodianship of the earth, the air, earth, fire, and water, the physical, tangible element. The intangible spirit is now the key that is unlocking the rest of the stuff we're meant to be, that we've evolved to be in this, you know, on this physical journey, and what we signed up for. And so the spirit aspect is literally what I just said then. What if the ritual spell and thing that you did, you never actually literally witnessed the result? However, it resulted. So that's an interesting way to think about it, because I think with witchcraft being a craft, certainly watching the evolution of it on social media, like TikTok videos, the ones that get the most hits, like 4 billion, is how to make a candle. 4 billion people, 4 billion views of, and I did say 4 billion views of a witch mixing up wax and putting black dye in it and oils and making a candle. So still very much a tactile, hanging on to an item to invoke a concept of witchcraft. And I'm offering as well that the next level for young witches particularly is that 5th element, spirit element, and trusting that. And that's what's going to unlock the rest of why we're here at this point in linear. evolution.
And that actually brings us to a very interesting, well, not interesting point, but like it's because I am one of those people who follows hashtag witch talk on TikTok.
Yeah, I
And
do too.
I've found some
Yeah,
amazing
now.
people on there, and I'm like, oh my God, where have
Yes.
you been my whole life? I'm like, you know,
Mm,
so like in some ways, like, you know, as you said, social media can be very, very valuable. I mean, sadly, there are some people who use those
Yeah.
hashtags to make us look bad. But anyway, it doesn't matter. What I was actually going to say, the thing I love about this book, just to bring it back to that, is that I almost feel as though you've preempted every single question that every teen witch is going to ask you, and you've
Yeah.
given them an answer without them having to feel awkward about asking the question. Because as
Thank you.
teens, we sometimes feel like, if I ask this question, I'm going to feel stupid. Or if I ask this question, it's like,
Yeah,
you know what I
people
mean?
are going to laugh at me. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
certainly, in
that's
sitting with
self-conscious.
that self-conscious stuff. And I sitting in the rooms of teenagers this last witch week is it's Tracy McPhee, my conspirator, not, I wouldn't say conspirator, my co-creator in magical events. She has an amazing group, I guess, organization called Wild Tribe, and so they presented it. So she works with a lot of young people as well, outside of working with me in these witchcraft events as well. But she's a witch, and anyway, so the two of us were sort of noticing you know, how the teens were, and there was, you know, like the girl I talked about who was very self-aware and very conscious and able to speak very articulately about her short attention span. There was also the ones that sat there like this, going and looking like this, and unique, and usually it was the conventionally prettiest ones that sat there like this, and the more odd, unusual, you know, ones that, you know, were not anchored in a concern about how they were perceived according to a certain type, were very relaxed, and it went both ways. It's so interesting. Everyone's an individual, So the quiet ones, you know, it was that, you know, when I said, has anyone got a question, I'd look around, and I knew that some had questions but weren't saying it. And I thought, all right, well, time to get psychic. What do I say now that's going to address what they're actually thinking?
What they're saying.
And so, okay, universe, give me something.
Come on, tap into it now.
And but when I actually got to meet them all individually after, and I'd say, you know, I was asking them, what'd you get out of tonight? What was your favourite bit? And what did you learn tonight? And the common answer was a lot. And I said, that's a good answer. That's great. And I said, do you feel like learning more? And they were like, yes, I'm really excited to learn more. So that was lovely. The other one was that I got was from people asking about, saying that they felt they love the parts I talk about animals and familiars and things like that. And then also was just feeling heard. One of them said and this was I would say a boy, I could say it's an appropriate way to say this, a boy who identifies more as a female and is on that journey, supported by his family. And he said, I feel heard. And
isn't that such a powerful
isn't that beautiful?
thing? Yeah.
So I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent
No,
then, but what was I saying?
You've actually segued.
Again. See? It's bringing it in.
Must be psychic.
Must be a little bit. It comes with the territory at a point.
That's right.
But no, it is quite a beautiful segue, because that's one of the biggest changes in a societal level, is that back in 2000, the concept of non-binary and of I call it the alphabet mafia, the LGBTIQ+A or whatever.
LGBT. I wrote it in the
all
book
of that.
I know, and see, and that's why I'm like,
that's it.
I can't ask
it just
a question.
adds,
That's why I call us the alphabet mafia, because every year we've got a new letter that gets added. But yeah, so one of the things that has changed a lot societally is that obviously being non-binary and being more gender fluid and all of these things are more prevalent now than they used to be. And I love how you address the fact that witchcraft is very much, I wouldn't say binary, but we look at things in polarity or duality.
Yeah.
There's a big part of that, even in our ritual work. With our ritual work, and what, you know, if you go into sort of something of a more traditional craft, where I know what I was reading when I was a teenager was a description of the great rite, which was Chalice. You are female. Athamate, blade, you are male. Conjoined, you are the forces that shape all creation. You literally put the blade inside the chalice. That's the great rite. That's male, female sex right there being described.
Yeah.
Forces, you know, male, female being gender specific, you know, a chalice being a womb that creates, and blade into it, boom, there you go. And they're the forces that shape all creation. We venerate these forces, and that's what we are. We are a fertility cult. And, you know, that's what it is. And the origins of what we, you know, are nebulous origins, but the predominant area that we draw on is that Northern European, Celtic, tribal, Teutonic kind of part of the world, and how it was living. Humans were interacting with the world and what they considered sacred, and it was procreation. It was procreation of the species unto itself, where the age, you know, span was much, much shorter, and also on the land, which they were so dependent on for food and sustenance and shelter and all of it. So we've evolved of that. All those themes and images are in our craft. So how do we evolve now as a craft where that, for a start, isn't necessary for survival anymore? And the concept of love is no longer gender specific. The concept of procreation is maybe gender specific for a while, like where you think you still need sperm and egg, but now that can be created in a separate vessel and raised by a, you know, male family, female family, and often to better effect than the traditional family. And it's
That's
like,
me.
you know, you know, and then you so isn't it extraordinary? And I just think that's what is allowing our species to remain relevant, is that because we've evolved so in such a way that we have stepped away from the natural way of things, that maybe that's the fifth element spirit coming in and allowing a shift away from the obvious tangible. However, I think that can be exploited by, you know, if I go into the whole idea of not going too far into it, my narrative to a degree of what I can witness going on as far as the distancing of people, and the you know, the aspect of if AI came in as a third gender, you know, so to speak, and how that functions with what rights, because we're already stripping away the traditional attachments of what a female, male, you know, like blah blah blah. It gets quite extraordinary, and I think most likely it's going to happen. Probably, most likely, definitely, it already is in so many ways. So we're along for the ride. What an extraordinary time to choose to be born, to sign up to be born in these physical forms at this point of human evolution. Where I see it as super exciting and beautiful and fantastic in witchcraft is how that you know, so much so for the point of procreation as far as humans go, yes, blade male, chalice female, that's still there, but it's not the way anymore. The only way to express the divinity that is at the core of creation, that is non-gender specific, and that is something that is. And so I love that we have this really expansive and diverse expression of what it is to be human, manifesting so tangibly in our spiritual practice as witches, in our even our practical practice of witches. Now, look, there was some arguments about, well, you know, I'm in a coven, high priest, you know, there's a female who identifies as a male who wants to be the high priest. I have an issue with that. I think if we're going to, I can't judge or comment on something like that because I'm not in the coven for a start. And it's actually a dialogue that I don't even feel, for me personally, I can be useful in, so I'm not going to get involved. So I think it's like there's so many distractions in the world right now that are happening to distract us from the real things that we need to be concerned about. I think this overly pedantic emphasis on political correctness is becoming, rather than inclusive and supportive, it's becoming a way to continue alienating people from each other. You know, divided we are weak, together we're strong. And so I was writing in Art of Witch and even in Teen Witch, you know, our diversity now is our strength. The magical community gets stronger. The more diverse we are, the more we respect it and honor and uphold each other's diversity, then we're strong. And that's, I don't know, that's I don't know, I do know. I do know, Spirit has told me that is the key to our survival and our relevance. So I love, you know, the alphabet mafia notion of existence. If it becomes something, however, that is not bringing out the best in people and allowing people to be inclusive, collaborative, holistic and loving, because love is the cure. of everything. If it's taking us away from those principles, then I think we need to address it. But collectively, mostly, when I have a young man identifying as female coming to me and saying, I feel heard, I think we're onto a good thing.
100%.
I agree.
And like, I know that it's slight
Yeah.
divergent off of on a different topic, but the other thing that I found it's interesting about this, and it's something that I'm seeing everywhere, this, like with this political correctness, I'm quite political when it comes to, I hate it when people call things cultural appropriation that aren't actually appropriated. That's one point that I always make on this podcast.
Oh, I don't like culture. The word cultural appropriation makes my skin feel uncomfortable.
Irks me because so many people have actually, we've had messages from people saying you're culturally appropriating this term, and I'm like, we're not though. Look up the definition of appropriation and then tell me I'm appropriating something.
Yeah, it's and this is where I think sometimes we're distracted from for want of a better term, the good fights, you know. I think, and also a dear friend of mine, a witch who I look up to and respect and have known for a very long time, said, witchcraft's a scavenger religion, spiritual path. We take a bit from everything and everyone and everywhere. But isn't that just the way? That's how we grow and evolve and learn, and
evolution. And
it's I think if there's a clear difference with someone, say, who's, you know, I mean, I could think of 100 examples straight away. Someone, this is very obvious, but someone's white and they've written a book about, accessing a portal through an Aboriginal sacred site that they have an exclusive awareness of. And they hadn't talked to any Aboriginals in the area who I would start to feel like, that's not sitting good with me. That feels a bit like appropriation. Yeah. However, if that white person has been working with the elders and like this report I was talking about that's been created in conjunction and discussion and collaboration with Aboriginal witches, and it's being presented as a source of information for us more European oriented witches to learn and grow and evolve with, and that to me is that's infinitely exciting and appropriate. And Spirit says yes, 100%. Do that, because together you're strong, divided you're weak. Together you're strong. The future of humanity as a with an essence of sovereignty and naturalness is to be together, not divided.
And then it also transcends that, and it goes into like areas of like, I know from your personal story that obviously you found out in your 20s about your actual heritage,
biological heritage as an adopted child. So firstly, wanted to shout out because I'm also part Hungarian, so woohoo. But anyway, so even that, like, I've noticed in a lot of the practices I've done, there's so much gatekeeping going on in our which about, imagine that you bring up such a good point, Darren. I just thought of it, like, what if before I knew I had Hungarian Jewish blood, what if I started to talk and write about Hungarian practices and of witchcraft, or even I started to talk about some kind of Jewish mysticism, and I was told I was culturally appropriating. And then I find out after the fact it's my blood. I've got an inherited cellular genetic memory of it. I mean, it's just gets so, and this is where I go back to, I'm even aware that as I'm talking to you, I might get, if someone watches this, they might decide that what I'm saying is not PC. But can we all just consider for a moment, let's fight the good fight and and put our attention on areas where it really makes a difference. And maybe we could all get out of our heads and actually go and do something like, sounds trite, but plant a tree, or do something for the environment, or maybe, just something along.
You're preaching to the choir here. You are preaching to the choir.
So inclusiveness and bringing people together, and how to actually move forward, not to
have this friction that becomes very static and still. Magic is the art of creating change.
That's it.
Change is the constant. Let's keep changing, evolving.
I think that's almost a mic drop moment in itself.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Exactly. That's all we do is to change. Like, I guess then in closing, because I know we're conscious of time, right?
Yes, we are. Yes.
So just in closing, the one of the other biggest things that stood out to me, and I know we've kind of touched on this topic, went away from it, touched on it, come away, touched on it, come away. It's the whole concept of like when you talked about social media, you're talking about random acts of online kindness.
Yeah.
And about spending more time in real life as opposed to in the online life. Like, I think it's very easy for us, especially because now, I mean, having gone through COVID, having been at home for so long, everyone's gone onto the internet and they're just so happy to give their opinions on there. But like the one thing that I've liked about doing this podcast is that I've been able to have some very meaningful conversations with witches on the other side of the world through this podcast.
Yes.
And I found that that's the thing that unites us, is having real conversations with real people. And that's what we need to focus on. It's not just about going, oh, that person did that spell wrong online, let me tell them what they did wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
or even the other idea, and you'd know this working in, you know, the wellness environment as you do, Darren, you know, that term lurking, where people don't interact and they scroll and scan and scroll and scan, and it creates this very toxic, unhealthy state of existence that, you know, and I encourage in the book, in the chapter about magical social media, is not to lurk, to engage, to use it for the tool of communication that it can be, and then also, you know, it was funny, I was asking for a show of hands during these face-to-face workshops in Western Australia, these with all these teen witches recently. And I asked, okay, whose favourite social media platform is TikTok? And every hand under 20 went up. Whose favourite is Instagram? Every hand over 20 went up. And whose favourite is Facebook? And every hand over 50 went up. And seriously, it's like you could see.
You know, what's
difference about that? The difference with TikTok is that it's predominantly a 15-second attention span.
Yeah, it's
most 99.9% of the videos are 15 seconds. And so that was very interesting, that it's however, I think in this very cluttered world of stimulus of all of that, I think that's definitely, like Venus saying she's got a short attention span, that girl, she's obviously being coached to have one. With the way, you know, and I even know with writing books now, this is actually a very, very, very long book. It's 80,000 words. Now almost that many, about 75,000. Back in the day, that was my first book deal, was 70,000 words. Now you're more commonly contracted to write 30,000 because people don't want to read 70,000. So you notice these things. So, but putting all that in context of what makes social media magical is the interaction, is the using it as a tool, is also the power of delete, the power of understanding and identifying what is online bullying, what is the most powerful spell you can do, this spell called delete that shit, and then go and practice a random act of online kindness and plant a positive seed somewhere where you don't need to know the result of it. You just offer it out there into the world to heal it. I think it's inevitable that we're just going to continue for as long as it exists, that we're not censored, you know, because witches aren't right now.
That's it.
That might change, you know, because who knows where the censorship comes from, based on an agenda as it's, prevailing at the time. For the time being, we have a wonderful tool of communication and learning, and it's one of the big pluses that came out of the lockdowns was, as you say, Darren, that sense of community that evolved. And I definitely offered this at the end of each workshop. I still reckon the best way for a witch to really feel like a witch is to take her, their shoes off and go outside and stick their feet in the ground, let their head open up, maybe ideally under a full or waxing moon, and just get that sense of, I am a living entity in this physical form, spirit manifesting physically and in this miraculous universe. And that is really what it means to be a witch. And then what you do with it can be very magical and fun. Yeah, it's up to you.
That's such a beautiful way to end up, because I know we're even though I could talk to you for hours, we do need to
literally.
Thanks, guys. Literally.
But it's that beautiful connection, and that's such a beautiful way to finish up. So it's been wonderful chatting to you today.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you so much. Lovely to see your gorgeous face, and great to see you too, Darren.
Oh, thank you.
Oh,
by the
thank you.
way, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I actually wore this t-shirt in honor of you.
I love the t-shirt.
'Cause
I've
to
been
me-
looking at it the whole time. 100% that witch. I love it.
Because to me, that's you. You're 100% that
Yeah,
witch.
that
Like, you know.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. It's the first thing I noticed. It's like the coolest t-shirt.
I'm that guy that now wears the really bold
He wears all the
statements
tops now.
out in public,
Gorgeous.
like, you know,
Yeah.
saying not every witch
Yeah.
lives in Salem. Like, I wear them everywhere.
Yeah, it's great. I think
Yeah.
I love that you know, it does link with something. I've mentioned this a few times in interviews, that I'll say it again for what it's worth. When the 20th anniversary edition of my, I guess, first internationally published book on witchcraft, which was Witch: A Magical Journey. It was my first 2 Australian books edited together and published internationally. And it had its 20th anniversary reprint 2 years ago now, in 2018, by with HarperCollins. And I had the opportunity to write a new foreword for it. And it was only 3 lines. It was like 20 years ago when this book came out, witches were shrouded in myth, suspicion, and fear. These days, who doesn't know a proud, self-avowed witch?
Yeah.
And I think that's very, very exciting and thrilling. And then I'll offer this very quickly too. Just on the weekend, it was the Witches Workshop Facebook group offered a clip with Sybil Leek, who's an amazing witch. It was in the 70s, and her Diary of a Witch was one of the first books that I read back in the 80s as well, when I was trawling through secondhand bookstores and stuff to find things like you had to back then, when there was no internet or anything. And I watched those interviews, and she's saying a very similar thing. She says in the interview, with this black raven on her shoulder and this archetypally older woman witchy look to her, and this big gap in her teeth, and they've got a little spooky with dark shadows on her face. And she says the future is our youth. She says it in the clip. She says the young people are the ones that will take this magic forward with them. And I thought, God, I'm out there saying the same thing right now. And that's not to put an emphasis on being young is better or more relevant or a more desirable state of being. I think what's reflecting, what's reflecting right now is that we are still spirits expressing reality in existence in a physical form. And so the linear age of the form is still relevant. And whilst, you know, my goal in life is not to grow older, but to grow better at living, which often means I behave more youthfully now than I did when I was young. You know, if you think of what's archetypally youthful, free, especially now in my crone years, I feel the maiden, and I wrote a song lyric recently, the maiden and the crone share the same throne. You know, you have this freedom,
so true.
this pre-puberty, post-puberty, post-reproduction capacity. There's this beautiful freedom, and that's what I love about the crone years coming into them. But I would offer the bud is that there is still a reason that young people are, you know, still the have the key to unlock the next level. And that's what I saw in these gatherings of young people now, is this inclusiveness, this ability to embrace their witchiness without fear and reservation, and truly embark on a magical life that isn't a fad or it isn't a fad. It's or a fickle thing. It's actually it's a part of them, and it's necessary. So I love it. It's very generational too. It's very beautiful. So
that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that as your parting words. So lastly, everybody jump onto www.fionahorne.com, order your copy of Teen Magic today. I don't care if you're a seasoned witch or if you've got children or no children.
Everything.
Seriously, buy it. It's
thank you.
Some of the most magical words
what
that have
the
been
cover
written.
is again.
Yeah.
And by the way, I love the cover.
Hold up your pink cover. Hold up your pink cover.
Yeah, do the
Darren.
pink one.
So let's just comment on this for a minute.
I love it.
That the pink cover was what the publishers thought was necessary to market witchcraft, you know, pretty much 20 years ago. And now we get marketed like this.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so check it out.
I was going to say, that makes me excited that it's evolved enough now that's what it is. Yeah. That's so what we can honor the dark. We can honor that it has to be dark to see the stars, and that our path is so often as much more as it's explored by many. It's still the hidden occult path. So it's beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yay.
So thanks once again for being another amazing guest.
Thank you, Darren. Lots of love. Until next time.
We'll see you all soon.
Bye.